A small family spanning 3 generations under one roof, living together on a plot of land in the city, suddenly faces a series of misfortunes, accidents befalling each family member one after another. But what's noteworthy here is that all these incidents share the appearance of an old demon. That's the story Hui brings to you all today. Welcome back, dear viewers, to Nguyen Hai's Strange Stories. Here, we share everyday spiritual stories that people from all over have sent in to the channel. In today's letter number 491, we meet Hoang Nam. Currently, he is living and working in Saigon. You've been following the channel for quite a long time. So whenever you listen to the stories, you turn the volume up loud. That's why the kids in the neighborhood often come over to your house, hanging around to listen together. Because you usually tell them stories as well. So they started urging you to. Uncle Nam, send your story to Uncle Hai to tell. After being encouraged so many times like that, you finally mustered up the courage to send a letter to the channel just to see if it would be received or not. This story actually happened in your own family. It's not just an ordinary story, but a truly significant event for your family. Back then, your mother said that your great-grandmother had 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl. Your maternal grandfather was the second child. At that time, your grandparents had 5 children, 1 boy and 4 girls. Your mother was the 5th child. Your grandparents' house used to be in the Nga Bai area on Ho Ti Ki Street, which is now in District 10. Your grandparents made a living by selling rice paper and coconut candy. Besides your grandparents and your aunts and uncles, there was also your grandfather's youngest sister, which means your mother's Aunt Bei. At that time, your mother's siblings were still young, so they just stayed at home and went to school. When they had free time, they helped their parents with the business and other things. The older siblings would look after the younger ones. On that day, Aunt Bei was tending the firewood to cook syrup for making malt candy. Because the firewood was wet. So while she was cooking, the fire kept going out and smoke filled the whole kitchen. As the smoke got thicker and thicker, Grandpa came out and yelled, asking, "What are you doing? Why is the house full of smoke? The kids are suffocating. What are you going to do about it?" I don't know if the two of them were already upset with each other before that, but just because the stove kept going out, it made her frustrated, and when Grandpa scolded her, Aunt Bai grabbed the pot of hot sugar water and threw it at Grandpa. The sugar water stuck all over him. It was so hot that Grandpa started screaming. Then, in a panic, he pressed his ear against the wall to try to wipe it off. You can imagine just how intense the heat of sugar water is. It tore off a whole patch of skin from his ear, his leg, and even his chest. People shouted for help and rushed Grandpa to the hospital for emergency treatment. Grandpa was severely burned. The areas where the skin didn't peel off swelled up, and blood, pus, and yellowish fluid kept oozing out. He was in so much pain, groaning and crying out constantly. As for your grandma, at that time she openly resented your aunt. She forbade her from coming near Grandpa or her children. He stayed in the hospital for a while, then was discharged. It wasn't because he got better, but because he got weaker, so the doctors sent him home. A few days after coming home, he passed away. He died on May 15, 1992. At this point, Aunt Bai asked Grandma for permission to come in and light incense for him to apologize. His funeral went on as usual. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. Until that day, Grandma took some money out of her pocket and gave it to your mother, telling her, "Go buy some food for your kids. I'm going over to the neighbor's house for a bit and will be back soon." But after that day, Mom noticed that Grandma was acting strange. She was just going over to the neighbor's house, but she gave all sorts of instructions to the siblings. At that time, Mom said to Grandma, "It's like you're leaving for good, not staying with us. Why give such detailed instructions?" Grandma just smiled and then went over to the neighbor's house. Grandma was out for a little while when she suddenly had a stroke, started convulsing, and foamed at the mouth. The neighbors saw it and called everyone over to help. Someone pinned Grandma down to scrape her wind at the tendon on her neck, but she did not regain consciousness. In the end, they had to rush her to the emergency room. Grandma was admitted to the hospital on June 12th. The doctor examined her and said Grandma had a stroke, and because of the incorrect first aid, scraping her wind, the situation got worse. At that time, Grandma had a stroke and fell into a deep coma. Grandma was in the hospital for 3 days before she regained consciousness. She gave my mom and the uncles and aunts a lot of advice. At that time, the troublesome aunt came to visit Grandma. As soon as she saw her, Grandma started having convulsions, foaming at the mouth, gasped a few times, and then passed away. At that moment, my mom's siblings were extremely furious with that troublesome aunt. Because of her, Grandpa died, and now Grandma has died too. Grandma passed away on June 15th, 1992. Exactly 1 month after Grandpa. They brought Grandma's body home. Everyone washed her and prepared her for the funeral rites. My third uncle listened to what people were saying. They said that the way Grandpa and Grandma died was a trung death, so they had to find something to ward it off. Otherwise, it would bring more family members along with them. At that time, my third uncle secretly took a kitchen chopstick from the trivet used to lift pots and put it inside the coffin. He did it without any of the family knowing. The funeral went on as usual. Luckily, Grandma's grave was placed right next to Grandpa's in the Bin Hung Hua cemetery. Some time after Grandpa and Grandma passed away, your third uncle went bankrupt. Gangsters chased after him, threatening to beat and stab him, so he sold the house that your grandparents had left behind, then divided the money and gold equally among the siblings. At this point, your aunt moved out on her own because your mom's siblings disliked her and wouldn't let her stay with them. Once everyone had money in hand, they each went their separate ways. Your mom moved to Bintan district to start her own life and live there. By that time, your mom already had her own family. She had 3 children, your eldest sister, your second sister, and then you. You were born in 1995. Your aunt just lived alone, without a husband or children. Many years passed, and after everyone had settled down, your mom had a dream where your grandmother came back. She returned, but couldn't speak. She just looked at your mom and cried. Mom saw Grandma come back often, so she didn't know if it was some kind of omen or not. She started asking around to find a place to have her fortune told. After someone gave her directions, she went to the Bachu market area. There, a lot of people do fortune telling and astrology readings. Mom said she even found it funny. On that day, she went to see this guy who claimed that Grandma had possessed him. He sat there swaying back and forth, then said, "Your mom died and your dad was so sad. He drank a lot, right? And your siblings aren't getting along." That's when Mom realized this guy was just making things up. She stood up and said loudly, "Oh my God, Uncle, my dad died before my mom. How could you say that?" The guy who was supposedly possessed just rolled his eyes at Mom and couldn't say anything. Well, what else could he say? He was speechless. Mom just walked away right then and there. But she didn't have time to take back the money she'd put on the plate. Your mom followed in your grandparents' footsteps, selling rice paper and candy here and there. That day, your mom was sitting under a tree in the Tanda area near Tamvu School. Do you know what it's called now? She was just sitting there when a woman came to buy rice paper, then looked at your mom and said, "There's a demon residing in your ancestor's grave. Your family should go check it out." Then the woman just walked away. Your mom was also confused and didn't know what to do. The next day, she called your aunts and uncles, gathered everyone at your house, and together they went to Bin Huang Hua Cemetery. To be honest, after so many years of just worrying about making a living, no one had gone to the cemetery to take care of the graves. When they got there, there were so many graves, and the scenery was nothing like it used to be, so they had no idea how to find the right one. In that area, there were some homeless people hanging around. Your dad gave them a little money and told them the names and dates of your grandparents passing. Very quickly, in about 5 minutes, they were able to point out exactly where the grave was and led the whole family right to the spot, exactly as described. When everyone got there, they saw that on top of the 2 graves, a kapok tree had grown, though no one knew when it had started growing. When they first bought the plot, it wasn't there. The tree wasn't very big, about the size of an adult's calf. Seeing this, your dad went to buy a saw and borrowed a machete to clear the weeds and cut down the tree. But strangely enough, this kapok tree was really hard to cut down. It was so tough that when the machete hit it, it made a screeching sound like you were chopping into something other than wood. When you chopped into it, the sap would ooze out and it was pinkish red, just like blood. It was really creepy to look at. Everyone worked for more than half a day before they managed to clear the area. After finishing the offerings and cleaning up, they all went home. Everything went on as usual for a few months after that. Then one night, Mom had a dream about Grandpa. He came and stood at the foot of her bed, telling her that Grandma and Grandpa had been captured by that demon and were being forced to serve it. It's holding your grandmother, but your grandfather managed to escape a little. As soon as he said that, he vanished really quickly. Mom woke up with a start, feeling extremely exhausted. The next morning, Mom called her siblings to go back to the cemetery and check things out. When everyone arrived, they discovered that the kapok tree had grown back. It had only been a few months, but it had grown almost as tall as before. Everyone was really unsettled by this. This time, your dad came prepared with tools. He sawed the tree down right to the ground, then bought lime to spread over it, and even poured concrete from nearby on top of it. Your mom's sisters went to invite a monk from a nearby temple to perform rituals and chant sutras. They kept at it until evening, and then everyone went home. Several months later, while your mom was out selling goods, she met a monk who was out collecting alms. The monk looked at her and said, "Someone in your family has been harmed for many years and hasn't been able to move on. The family should help release and free the spirit." After saying that, the monk just walked away, leaving your mom feeling even more anxious. That evening, when your mom got home from selling, she called her siblings to ask about it. At that point, Uncle Ba spoke up and said, "I did it. I put a kitchen chopstick and a pot holder into the coffin." He said he did it because he feared that if someone died from a contagious disease, it would bring more misfortune to the family. At that moment, Mom was really angry with him. But since what's done is done, she let it go. After all, it's not like she could kill him now. So the family discussed and decided to just exhume the grave. They would take the remains to be cremated and then place them in the temple. When they proceeded to exhume the grave, there was one thing that your mom remembers most to this day. Do you know what it was? Your grandfather's grave had completely decayed, leaving only a long stretch of bones, but when they looked at your grandmother's, there was still flesh and skin visible. Especially the kitchen chopstick and the pot holder, which were wrapped in a plastic bag. They were still completely intact. The bones and flesh were still there, so the person exhuming the grave had to use their hands to strip the flesh off, then clean the bones with alcohol, for example. Only after that did they arrange them into the small coffin at the bottom of the grave. When the water rose, there were a lot of catfish and eels. Each one was huge. Seeing that scene, even to this day, your mother never dares to touch those two creatures. They took the grandparents to the crematorium and sent their ashes to the temple early 2016. From that day until now, the whole family hasn't seen the grandparents come back in their dreams anymore. Everyone thinks that the two of them have peacefully moved on to the afterlife. But a year later, another misfortune struck your family. Your father, while at work, had an accident and passed away. Your mother was heartbroken and fell ill. She had heart disease and high blood pressure. That time, when she was rushed to the hospital, the doctor called you and your siblings over and said your mother needed heart surgery and told the family to prepare money. At that time, your two older sisters were already married with children, but the whole family still lived together. No one had moved out. You said you worked in the performing arts, often traveling for shows, so you were rarely at home. When your mother needed emergency care, about 400 million VND was required. All the siblings could only gather about 200 million at home. And your uncles and aunts were also struggling financially. No one had enough money to lend a large sum. Your two sisters and the rest of you decided to sell the house to get money to take care of your mother first, then figure things out later. As long as you're alive, you can always earn more money. After your mother's surgery and treatment, the whole family followed your youngest aunt's advice and went down to the Binchan area to buy land and build a house. That was back in 2018. After buying the land, building the house was also a real struggle. The land papers here were all unofficial documents. There were no pink or red books at all. The house was finally completed in July 2020. When moving into the new house, your mother performed all the necessary rituals very thoroughly. You worship Buddha, but you also honor your ancestors. There are always offerings and incense burning. Your mother even recites sutras every day. Yet misfortunes kept happening one after another to every member of the family. As for your mother, it was even worse. She had to go to the emergency room so often that the doctors recognized her face. Your second brother-in-law works as a truck driver, transporting goods on trips between the north and south. He drives an 8-ton Hino truck. He is extremely careful when it comes to driving. So, no matter what, he always drove very safely. He started driving when he was 19, and even after he and his wife had 2 kids, he was still driving. That day, he finished his trip late at night, parked the truck at the Cat Lai lot, and then rode his motorbike home. He drove himself home and hadn't been drinking at all. It was around 11 p.m. Suddenly, he fell onto the road, crashed into the median strip, and lost consciousness right there. People living nearby came over and called the police, then took him to the emergency room and all that. The police took his phone and called his wife. The whole family panicked and rushed to Tong Hat Hospital. He was lying in the emergency room. His head, nose, and eyelids were bleeding. His teeth were broken. His face was swollen, and he was on oxygen. He was unconscious for about 3 days before he gradually woke up. He said he was just riding his motorbike as usual. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, an old man ran out and crashed into the front of his bike. And at that time, he was only going about 50 kilometers per hour, right? It wasn't even fast enough to cause such a serious accident. He stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks before being discharged. The police also processed the paperwork to return the bike to the family. Because he fell by himself, there wasn't really any accident. He said that all his life, from growing up in the Mekong Delta to now, this was the first time he had seen a ghost like that. That was his story. Now let's move on to my older sister. You said that your brother and sister like to drink. They drink casually, just a few cans for fun before going to bed, not heavy drinking or partying hard. So that day your sister went to a birthday party and had a little beer. The buffet party was upstairs, so they had to use the metal staircase on the side. After eating and drinking, everyone got up together. So she said that she drank 4 cans that day, but her tolerance is really high, so she doesn't get drunk easily. Yet, as she was walking down the stairs behind everyone else, she suddenly felt like someone forcefully pushed her from behind. At that moment, as she turned to look while falling, she saw a dark shadow with no clear face, slightly hunched over, standing there. She tumbled down the stairs, hit her head, and then there was a hole. Blood started gushing out. Everyone panicked, tried to stop the bleeding, and rushed her to the emergency room. The doctor took X-rays and stitched up her wound. A few days later, when her condition was stable, they discharged her and let her go home. When she got home, everyone said it seemed like such bad luck. Your mom bought offerings to make a ritual for the house. Then, a month later, it was your eldest son's turn. This kid was both studying and working as a cook at the restaurant. That year, he was almost 20. His job always had him coming home late. Every day, he wouldn't get home until about 1 a.m. That night was just like any other. After finishing work, he rode his motorbike home. When he got home, he started looking for his keys to open the gate, but he couldn't find his wallet or his phone anywhere. The gate key was also kept in his wallet. So he put his backpack down on the stone bench right next to the gate door. Then he rode his motorbike back to the restaurant to see if he could find them there. That morning, your mom and you had just woken up. When you opened the door, you saw his backpack left in front of the gate. You tried calling him, but all you got was the out-of-service message. Checking the security camera, you saw that he had come home, left his backpack, and then left again. You figured he must have come home and then gone out drinking, so no one tried calling him anymore. By the afternoon, after waiting for a long time and still not seeing him come home, everyone started to get worried. They kept trying to call, but it was always out of service. They also tried contacting him on Facebook and Zalo, but there was no response at all. At this point, everyone started to get really scared. They began reaching out to his friends on Facebook to ask around. Some of his co-workers said that he had gone home after work yesterday, while others said they didn't know and hadn't been able to contact him. Seeing this, the whole family went to report it to the police. The police said that since he hadn't been missing for 24 hours yet, he was probably just at a friend's house somewhere. But they also said they would look into it, and if anything came up, they would inform the family. The whole family was anxious and worried, so they split up to search everywhere. First, they went to the nearby hospitals to look for him. They even went to Thong Nhat Hospital, the place where his older brother had stayed before, but they still couldn't find him. On the side of your third sister's husband's family in Sok Trang, who are Khmer people, 2 of your mother's distant relatives went to consult a spiritual master from their side, asking for help to find your cousin. They told him that the boy's name was Min. The master took Min's birth date and time, looked at his photo, then lit incense and prayed. After a while, he meditated. Sometime later, he opened his eyes and said, "My spirit soldiers have gone and reported back. The boy's body is seriously injured. He has already lost one of his souls." The master also added that right now the boy is in a deep coma, lying in a hospital near his home, about a dozen kilometers away as the crow flies. The family then followed that lead and continued searching, also asking friends and relatives to help. At this point, your mother could only light incense and pray to the ancestors for protection. Since she has a heart condition, everyone was very worried about her. On the third day at noon since losing contact with Min, the police from Bintan district contacted the head of your neighborhood to look for the head of the household, which is your mother. They informed her that Min's motorbike had been involved in an accident on the roadside. As for him, he was being treated in emergency at Tongnat Hospital. His motorbike was being temporarily held by the Bintan police. The bike was completely wrecked and deformed. The bike's triple tree was bent all the way backward. The wheels, the yellow rims, and the bodywork were all totally smashed. The family rushed to the hospital, but strangely, his older brother had already asked around at that hospital and no one there knew anything. The family then thought maybe he didn't have any identification on him, so no one knew his name. When they got to the emergency room, his older sister collapsed on the spot. Min was lying there on oxygen, his head injured and bandaged due to a brain trauma. Blood had flowed from the corner of his eye and his ear, but by then it had all dried up. His collarbone was broken and the doctors had to splint it. His arms and legs were covered in wounds and punctures. You're a young man, but seeing your nephew lying there like that, you have to turn your face away because it's such a frightening sight and it hurts so much to see. The family had to pay for him, handle all the hospital admission procedures, pay extra for the surgery to fix and secure his bones, then for brain scans and all sorts of things. It cost hundreds of millions, yet he still just lay there in a coma. But we were also grateful to the hospital staff. They tried their best to save him, so gradually he started to wake up, but he didn't remember anything. Your mother cooked porridge and fed him, and the third sister helped too. When people asked if he recognized anyone, he just shook his head and couldn't say anything at all. Your mother felt so sorry for him that she cried all the time. The doctor said he had a brain injury with a blood clot and needed surgery to remove the clot. Only after that did he gradually stabilize. The family also agreed and signed the papers to allow him to undergo the surgery. Before the surgery, they didn't let him eat anything, only allowed him to drink water, sugar water. He was hungry, so he said to your older sister, "Auntie, I'm hungry. Do you have anything for me to eat?" Hearing that, your older sister could only cry. Then he continued, "Why are you crying, Auntie? Please give me something to eat. Later on when I earn money, I'll pay you back." She cried as she went to find the doctor, asking if he could eat anything. The doctor said to buy bird's nest soup and feed him a little just to keep him going, so she did as instructed. When it was time for the surgery, he was placed on a stretcher to be taken in, and both his brother and sister went along with him. He told his older sister, "Auntie, please wait for me, don't leave. I won't have anyone by my side otherwise." When the operating room doors closed, his older sister hugged his older brother and cried. The surgery lasted 8 hours, and the whole family was restless, unable to sit still. Their mother stayed at home, reciting prayers, hoping he would get through the ordeal safely. After the surgery ended, the doctors wheeled him out to the recovery room. At that point, he was awake. His older sister fed him milk and wiped him down. Seeing his body all bruised and battered, she just couldn't bear it. A few days later, his phone number unexpectedly called his older sister's phone. The person on the other end of the line explained, "A few days ago, I happened to find a wallet and a phone together, both left in the same place at the time that was quite close to 1 o'clock in the morning. I tried several times to unlock the phone, but unfortunately couldn't manage to do it, so now I have put the SIM card into my own phone to try to reach someone." But what's strange is that the man said the phone was still working fine, the screen still turned on, there was still a signal, but for some reason, there hadn't been a single incoming call. So you took your older sister to the location the man mentioned to try to meet him. He said he works nights as a manual laborer at Bin Loi Market. That night, he was working late and saw a phone and a wallet stacked on top of each other next to a trash bin. Your sister also told him about Min's situation. You gave him 500,000 Vietnamese dong as a thank you, but he firmly refused to take it. He told you to keep the money to take care of your nephew. After thanking him, the two of you said goodbye. Many days later, you went to visit Min. While you were sitting next to him, you picked up his phone and tried to unlock it, but you didn't know the password. He then reached out, took the phone, entered the password, and unlocked it. At that moment, you and your sister were so happy that you called the doctor. The doctor came to examine him again and asked him his name and where he was from. He answered everything correctly. The doctor said, "Congratulations to your family, he's recovering now. But don't ask him too many questions, it might give him a headache. Avoid putting too much pressure on him." You were overjoyed and immediately called home to share the news with your family. He stayed in the hospital for another week before being discharged and going home. Once he was feeling better at home, he told us that on that day he had run home and realized his wallet and phone were missing. They were still in his backpack. So he left his backpack and ran to the restaurant to look for them. It was late at night, the streets were empty, so he was riding fast. He was on Tan Kai Tan Kwai Street, and when he reached a curve, he suddenly saw an old man coming out from the bushes on the left. Startled, he hit the foot brake and squeezed the handbrake, but the bike was going too fast, so he couldn't avoid the old man and crashed right into him. The bike flew up and slammed into the wall with a loud bang. While he was trapped under the bike, he saw the figure of his grandfather, that is, your father. He saw his grandfather struggling with that old man again, and then he didn't know anything else. In the morning, when people went out to exercise, they found him and called the police. As for the phone and wallet, he dropped them there but doesn't know why. Even though there were a few 100,000 dong in the wallet, nothing was missing. All his personal documents were still intact. After that incident, your friend's family was very anxious, so they asked an elder from the other side of the family to consult a spiritual master. The master checked and said that his spirits went to your friend's house to take a look. They saw that the house was bought without proper ownership papers. That piece of land had changed hands many times, but no one had been able to build a house on it. He also added that on the piece of land next to the house, near the kitchen area, there was an old man who died there a long time ago, and his body was buried underneath, probably for 100 years already. There used to be a large pond there, but it was filled, divided into lots, and sold. Now, he is a demon, not just an ordinary ghost. Your family did make offerings when you moved in, but only inside the house, so he couldn't receive them and started causing trouble. Not to mention, the kitchen and bathroom were built right next to where he was buried. Your family was absolutely terrified when they heard this. Your mother cooked, bought roast duck, and set up incense and candles to make offerings for peace and blessings. 2 months later, you were riding your motorbike, taking your mother out to run some errands. It was only 10 in the morning, the sun was out, and you had just left home, barely more than 5 kilometers away. While waiting at a red light at the Vin Loc A Industrial Park intersection, you suddenly started to feel unwell. Your head felt strangely dizzy and disoriented. You told your mother, "All of a sudden I feel really tired." As soon as you finished speaking, your ears started ringing and you collapsed onto the street. People standing nearby saw what happened and rushed over to help. They helped you over to a corner by a tree in the park to sit down. The fatigue came on so quickly that your mother couldn't react in time. Your arms and legs curled up. Your whole body started shaking. Your tongue retracted all the way in, and you felt like you were about to bite your tongue. You grabbed your mother's hand, intending to bite it, but she pulled away. Then she grabbed a water bottle and gave you the cap to bite on. People on the street started to gather around, more and more of them. Some came over to massage your arms and legs and rub oil on you. Your mother called home for your sisters. Your third sister and a neighbor came out to help lift you up and rushed you to the nearest private hospital for emergency care. When you arrived at the hospital, the doctor checked your ECG and blood pressure. At that moment, it was up to 220. The doctor said if you had arrived 30 minutes later, you would have had a stroke. Fortunately, you could still be saved. After giving you first aid, they put you in an ambulance and transferred you to Hospital 115. Even the doctors there were shocked. The doctor said, "Oh my God, how can a young person have such high blood pressure? Has anyone in your family ever had a history of high blood pressure? If we're talking about high blood pressure, only your mom and your maternal grandmother have had it. It's probably hereditary." You stayed in the hospital for a few days before coming home. Then the youngest son of my second sister ended up in the hospital. He went to school, and when classes ended at noon, he took his bicycle to go home. While he was messing around at the bike parking area, he suddenly saw a swarm of bees come flying in and surround him. He got stung on his head, face, nose, ears, legs, basically all over. Panicked, he screamed and ran to the security office. The security guard had to use a spray to try to help, but even then, your nephew passed out. He was taken to the intensive care unit for poisoning. The doctors gave him emergency treatment and managed to remove a total of 36 bee stingers from his body. He was swollen all over, had a fever with chills and convulsions. It got so bad that he vomited and had to relieve himself right there. His parents were worried sick. Both of them took turns caring for him. Your mom was worried about you, your second sister was taking care of him, and your third sister was both looking after her child and cooking and managing the house. After that, you and your nephew were discharged from the hospital. The family discussed inviting a spiritual master from Soktrang to perform a ritual. After all, why did the family keep having only bad luck and misfortune? The master came together with your uncle-in-law's family, along with 2 of his disciples. Before arriving, the master asked your mom to prepare offerings for the ritual. Incense, candles, fruits, then boil 2 chickens with their wings crossed and also make a pot of plain rice porridge. At 11 a.m., the master set out the offerings for the ritual. Your mom and your sisters knelt around. The master cut a small bamboo branch and tied several strands of red, yellow, and green thread to it. And there was also a white strip of cloth, like a mourning band. He cut it into a long piece, stretching from the kitchen out to the front yard. On that strip of cloth, the master placed several pieces of wood he had brought along. Then he scooped up some ashes from the Buddha altar and your family's ancestral altar, mixed them with some kind of black powder from a jar, and then spread the mixture evenly over the strip of cloth. At this point, the master's 2 disciples took a basin of water and mixed it with a red powder that looked like cinnabar, along with a bit of herbs. You weren't really sure what it was. They were doing a whole lot of things. Once everything was ready, the master sat down in the middle of the house. The 2 disciples sat on either side of him. The master began chanting scriptures in Khmer. Meanwhile, the 2 disciples were striking the bell and cymbals. After a while, they scooped some of the cinnabar water into a bowl. The master formed a mudra, placed the bowl on his hand, raised it above his head, and chanted for a bit. Then, after a moment, the master dipped his finger into the water and applied it to the foreheads of each family member. At this point, the 2 disciples stood up and started dancing, but their dance was really strange, kind of like the way indigenous people dance when they celebrate. They then took a bunch of glass soda bottles out of a cloth bag and smashed them. Then, the 2 of them took another large piece of cloth, spread it out, and scattered the pile of broken glass on top. They danced from the outside into the pile of broken glass. What was special was that they weren't wearing any shoes, just barefoot, stepping right onto the shards of glass, even stomping down hard. Your family members were so shocked watching this that they broke out in a cold sweat. After a while, it was the master's turn to stand up. He took a red brush, dipped it into the cinnabar ink in the bowl, and then began to draw on the white cloth that had been laid out. He drew all sorts of characters that you couldn't read. After that, the master took water from the basin and told everyone to wash their faces. When you brought the water to your face, you could smell the scent of cinnamon wafting through the room, like the smell of a traditional herbal pillow. After everyone finished washing their faces, the master also sat down. The other two people stopped dancing as well. They took 4 small ceramic jars out of their basket. They looked just like tiny salt jars. They were properly covered with lids. The master then took the pile of glass shards and put them into the 4 jars. Then he lit 3 incense sticks. He went back to the kitchen corner. After that, he recited an incantation. While holding the incense, he kept waving it in the air, and it was like he was striking at the air as well. After a while, on that piece of white cloth, human footprints started to appear. Black footprints. They appeared one after another, as if someone was walking on the cloth, taking long steps, and heading out the door. After that, the master told your brother-in-law to take that piece of cloth and burn it, then collect the ashes for him. Your brother-in-law hurriedly did as instructed. Once it was done, he handed it to the master. At this point, the master divided the ashes and put them into the 4 jars from earlier. Then he took the basin of holy water and poured it into each jar. Carefully, he took out some glue and sealed the mouths of the jars, put the lids on, and stuck 2 talismans on each jar in the shape of a cross. He told the family to dig at the 4 corners of the house and bury the jars there. Your older cousins and you went to do as told, and that was it. After cleaning up, the master and everyone started talking to each other. The master said that when he went to the kitchen corner holding incense and chanting, he was actually talking to the demon. It didn't want to leave. It wanted to stay and keep trying to take someone from your family, no matter how long it took. Because it had tried many times, but your ancestors helped protect you, so it kept wanting to torment you like that. The master said he couldn't persuade it. He had no choice but to use force and fight it. After a while, it finally lost and admitted defeat. The master then summoned the spirit enforcer and told the demon spirit to step onto the cloth in order to leave. That was the moment when everyone saw footprints appear on the cloth. That was the demon leaving. As for the 4 jars, the master used a protective spell on them to keep wandering spirits from coming in and disturbing the family anymore. Once everything was settled, your mother gave the master a bit of money, but he only took enough to cover his travel expenses and to buy some supplies. The next day, your mother prepared a small feast to thank everyone. After the meal, the master and the elder headed back to Soktrang. And up until now, your family has been living peacefully. There haven't been any more strange occurrences like before. That concludes the entire letter today, sent by Huang Nam to Kin. It's a letter full of continuous dramatic events, right? Listening to it, we can't help but be drawn in, captivated by the story. Fortunately, in the end, there was a solution and your family can now live in peace. Wishing Nam and his family continued peace and good health. Wishing everyone a good night's sleep.